colors are different, but the odds are high that you could agree, if you were forced to, there, and there. The odds are high that you probably would agree on this starting 10 years from now and really going in the second stage. You might not agree on committing yourself to a high-density corridor in the first stage, and you probably wouldn't agree on that. That would be very controversial, to make that investment in the first stage.
Because
yes,
this would be more
Seems
first
so
stage
logical.
here.
These are both 40 years.
No, this, I'm sorry, I was pointing to the wrong. This would be very controversial as a public investment in the first stage, unless they knew what the 40-year future would be, because it's a hell of a lot cheaper to do this now than it will be in 30 years.
Yeah.
In other words, you've got to convince people of the 40-year plan to go this way.
Yeah, that's probably the realistic goal, and that's the idealistic goal in the 40-year time frame. Because those pockets are embedded in that
I
area.
totally agree. I totally agree. And the idea of building the infrastructure here, knowing what's going to happen, filling this part in with low density, protecting that zone, and then setting this up for the second stage when it has to be better, that's the solution.
Tim, how many people are we in 40 years' time? How many people are we trying to accommodate?
200,000 plots.
So you know,
Additional.
Additional.
300,000 now, roughly, in this area.
It's doubling, just doubling.
Yeah.
Rule of thumb.
Just about, yeah.
Oh, well,
40
just in this
years
study
twice.
area, I was thinking countywide.
so the history
Oh.
of A, our inability to do investment, and B, people's unwillingness to be in high density, probably means that the more likely solution is that half of that 300,000 will go further south. They'll just keep traveling, looking for open space. They're not going to buy into what we think is a great solution.
And complain about traffic when they have to then commute all day.
And what transport
I
costs?
think that is a great strategy.
I think so too.
And I think that it can be slightly more articulated as smaller pockets of even higher density while still having some low density. That's a negotiation. There's fine tuning of this. It's not monolithic. These are towns, okay, and they're not monolithic. They're probably overstated for industry and overstated for commerce and understated for residential development. I think the programmatic projection is wrong, because this is an area that has a higher percentage of industry land use than the rest of the place. And what you did was project, which is absolutely normal.
It's a center of employment. It's not a bedroom community.
That's clear. So it's really, I think that there's a negotiation between the two, but in the long-term strategy, that's what's going to happen. It has to happen. But how do you get the politics? You get the politics by basically telling people now that the population is going to double in the 40 years, and there is no land after 20 years. And if the public doesn't make the investment of that, they'll never be able to do that because the price will go up too much.
Yeah, but then it's also okay. Then they don't do it. Then
No,
people
no.
just drive.
They go south.
All that happens is it triples the cost of housing. That's what really
Yeah, that's a
happens.
good point.
And it cuts the size of houses in half, which is probably a good idea. But that's the consequence. The consequence is not necessarily movement, because you're already an hour out of the Seattle in rush hour, and you're probably a half an hour at least to get to the airport zone and the core in non-rush hour. And to make that an hour and a half, the cost of energy will drive you crazy, and you're not going to do that in 40 years. It's an unsustainable. That's a sustainable pattern. Going further is less likely to be.
High-speed train.
No, because trains are point to point. They don't. High-speed train is not the solution. Bus systems are a better solution, because you need a car to get to the train to get to the place to get to a car. It just doesn't work. Train is not the solution. You don't have the density for it.
There's a stepping stone there with buses first, then you get bus rapid transit.
Absolutely.
Because that's the compromise between train and bus.
Sure,
But
you
again,
need the density.
when you go to BRT, you've got dedicated corridor right away here, and that's what the BRT, bus rapid transit,
So
is all
that's what's
about.
going to happen along that corridor.
Yeah.
But that can't happen if it's a low density pattern. That's an automobile pattern. And it might be electric cars or small cars, whatever it is. But that's still a marketplace that's a familiar marketplace.
I just wanted to say this is the current, or maybe even a couple years ago, market, but somebody made the comment earlier that millennials are looking to live in cities. And I wonder if that cultural change would get us to that pattern
Yes, the
more
answer is
quickly.
It has to. Actually, that has to happen in order for that to occur.
I agree.
Because given the current trends, and the current trends are going to last for another 10, 15 years, as it would be, in transitioning into this other stage here. But of course, given the nature of plan, the plan can't just all of a sudden happen, right? There's a transition into this. And when we look at the plan, we're looking at the build-out of the plan.
Right.
This is what we're looking at in 40 years. It needs to be there in 40 years. That needs to start in 40 years.
Well, that's right.
So,
That's right.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, though, your millennials don't want to live here. They'll want to live in downtown Seattle
That's
or
right.
downtown.
That's why I'm wondering, yeah.
It'll be an older population that's out there.
Or people seeking cheaper housing.
Rishi?
I was
expensive
going to ask you,
downtown.
did any of the teams have new roads or railways, or did you just
Yes,
use
they
the funded?
no, they have new ones. Oh.
We didn't, did we create new diagrams?
Yeah,
Is that what
there's
you're asking?
new
Yeah.
light rail, there's new
No, in this last,
I don't think there were any actually new.
yeah, well, the
Proposed but not
PSRC,
yet built.
Yeah.
They're building it.
John.
Proposed and funded.
the PSRC T2040 are the 9 diagrams that were the initial 9 diagrams. So that's the build out of what we
So this
expect to do.
assumes the funded
Yeah.
roads.
Yeah.
In other words, somebody's thinking ahead on that issue.
The funded plus 3 other projects.
Yeah, that, all that black is, yeah.
So that was very useful. In other words, the constants were there. Somebody's thinking ahead, which is good.
those King County planners, where they,
Well, PSRC,
Yeah, except that the King County planners,
Yeah.
the King County planners are going to be faced with a problem in the next short time, in about 10 years, when they realize that the growth management policies themselves have to change. They're not going to stay. They can't.
They have to adapt before.
They
it's
have
too
to
big of a
adapt
problem.
to density. They have to adapt to a lot of infrastructure investment, and it's going to make a mess. It's going to make a mess on some streams, and you're going to have to build. You're going to have to build a lot. One of the things that just 10 minutes. One of the things that is really interesting, and I had a discussion with Ken on this, is that the software that Rishi has developed and the workflow and the way you've done it, you negotiated 4 teams in 25 minutes. All right? And furthermore, you designed the region. There's negotiation that can happen between the two. That's going to dominate this one. That's very clear. In the second stage, this is maybe going to stay alive a little bit for 10 or 20 years. But you could come up with a scheme or a staging scheme on this. It'll take you a half a day probably, but you can do it. You know you can do it. But we didn't spend that much time talking. And the idea of negotiating through diagrams, which everybody more or less understands, it saves a lot of wear and tear in time. When's the last time you designed a region in 2 days? And furthermore, we also realized that when we evaluated the schemes, some of those were misunderstood. So you do that a second time, a third time. When we've done workshops, we would do that exercise after every stage and use it as a learning tool. For example, you got a -2. Well, next time, how about a +1? Right? And or that team got a +2. Let's see what they did. Right? That is a really useful guidance to who to look at. And we've done that in analog workshops for years and years and years. You saw, if you went to my lecture or if you read my book, you've seen case studies with that. We always do that. And it saves the faculty, by the way. I make the students do that. Why? Because they should learn how to make judgments about other people's work. They're going to be employers, not employees. Right? So why should the faculty do that? Let somebody who knows something or learns something do that. And if you can always say, I disagree with you on that, but that's a very useful exercise. It puts the people, it puts the science people into 2 very interesting situations. One, their diagrams are the first diagrams. They know more than you do if you're going horizontal through. They're not necessarily good at going horizontal, but they go vertical really, really well. The second is, after you've gone horizontal, go vertical, see what happens. Then go horizontal again, then go vertical, and don't do it more than 3 times. And for example, this design is a hell of a lot better as the third design than the second, which was a hell of a lot better than the first. And so is this. Prima facie evidence that stealing is a good idea.
But I think you raised a good point that I was able to steal somebody else's idea, and I didn't have to listen to them for half an hour to understand it. I mean, I know that sounds
exactly
cynical,
right.
but it means you can just see, visualize a good idea.
You get a
It's just what
sentence, you get
want,
a
and you
diagram,
do
it's
it.
color-coded, you know where it is, what else do you want to know?
Right.
You can even tag the cost onto it and say, I can't afford it. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
So this is essentially negotiation through borrowing.
Obvious. Yeah, and getting a rapid feedback to approve. And it's the rapid feedback combined with those things that mitigates against a bad strategy.
Turn-taking and participation is the core, the center. If you can do rapid turn-taking, which is an exchange of ideas, essentially, that leads you from a disintegration to an integration in the synthesis.
Well,
Much of the literature shows that this is so.
That's what-
This is kind of what we did. So, yeah, very useful.
It works,
Yeah.
for which we have Hirishi to thank.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank
Well,
you.
And a lot of emails.
I would like to thank Carl, Tess, and Rishi for coming all this way to the University of Washington, and all of you for coming to be able to participate in this, because without all of you to participate in this just wouldn't have happened, actually.
And we welcome feedback on improvements, but all those do is join a line of 120 others. But then there's a prioritization and a feasibility thing. Keep in mind that making it complicated is not our objective. Making it easy is our objective.
Easy and powerful.
Yeah. And these techniques are really good at figuring out what the strategy options are. They're not good at tactics. For tactics, you need ownership information, you need polygons that are property lines, you need law, you need the stuff that Esri is really good at. Look at a map, stare at it, tweak it a little bit. This is not that. This is, should we put it here? Should we put it here? Should we put it here? And that has to be done fast. Why? Because there are an infinite number of plans, and you want to get rid of the bad ones and go to the heart of the good ones. Figure out your choices. If they don't work collectively, fine. Then you have to choose this or this. But you're not dealing with billions of options.
One of the interesting things is that there are two dichotomous strategies, one might say. The forecasting approach to the future and the backcasting approach to the future. In this regard, actually, we're doing a bit of both. Is actually interchanging is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're taking forecasted information. We started, the targets were based upon actually population projections from a parcel level urban sim, from a parcel level aggregation, as it would be, developing in just to get a start of it, as it would be. But then at the same time doing the visioning thing to see where we think the future might be out there, and sort of negotiating that as it would be. So, yeah.